Welcome to Season 1 of The Chris Hanna Show, where we're going all in on how to improve your performance, your productivity, and your impact. Today's podcast is brought to you by my website, chrishanna.ca. There you're going to find blogs, ebooks, and coaching solutions on how to assist you with achieving your goals. You'll also find a description of some of my recent speaking topics that are currently offered. For all that and more, visit chrishanna.ca today. Welcome to another episode of The Chris Hanna Show. Today we're going to talk about some important things to remember when preparing for an interview. I've had the opportunity throughout my career to hire and promote hundreds of people into various different roles. I've interviewed thousands of people, and I've seen good ones, and I've seen a lot of bad ones. Far too often people get hung up on an interview, and part of the reason that they struggle with the interview and they don't achieve that job that they're ultimately looking for is because they haven't prepared. They haven't done the right homework or level of due diligence required to really nail their interview. The point of an interview is the same for everyone, is to make sure that someone stands out and that they can be distinct enough to really wow the hiring manager, HR representative. But people forget that, and they sometimes think that they can just go in and answer the same old standard questions, but they really need to be different. So here are several important things to remember when preparing for an interview. The first, at least a couple days before the interview or a week before, depending on how much notice you have, here's a couple things that you need to remember. 1, spend time to research the organization and the position. There's nothing worse than someone coming in and not knowing really what the role is that they've applied for, or anything about the organization themselves. If someone doesn't take the time to understand what the organization is truly all about, they probably don't care to be in that company, or they're not really interested in the role in the first place. You want to make sure you're spending your time researching the organization and the position and making sure you're finding something that is going to match your strengths and your skill set. The next key thing to remember is that you should identify the organization's major competitors and do some basic research on how they are different. When you're having an opportunity to connect with a hiring manager, you want to make sure that you can really sell yourself as someone who is educated and understands the industry and almost feel like you're part of the team without already being part of the team. And if you can understand the competition and what separates company A from company B, that can make a world of difference. Another thing you need to remember to do is prepare specific examples of how your skills and experience make you a strong fit for the organization's needs. They say that past performance is a great indicator of future performance. So when you go into your interview, if you do not have specific examples lined up to highlight your skills and what you have done in the past, and how you can relate that to the new company or new position that you're trying to go for, you're going to struggle. The key word here is specific. Far too often, I see candidates who will be very generic in their response, glossing over details that are critical. It's important to be as specific as possible, but without overdoing it. It is a fine balance. You don't want to have an answer that goes on for 5-10 minutes of just talking. If you can get something out within a minute or 2 max, that's going to make a world of difference. And then you'll be able to articulate a clearer story back and forth with the person that you're talking to. Now, when you talk about things like your skills and experience, another thing to remember is that you want to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. What is really special about you? What do you offer to this organization that somebody else might not be able to offer? If you've done your research well in terms of the organization and the position, you might be able to find that there are certain strengths that you have that you want to highlight throughout your interview. So those need to be prepared in advance. But nobody's perfect. You are going to have weaknesses. Some hiring managers will ask you the question, about your weakness. And that's something you need to be prepared for. How are you going to try and overcome this weakness? Or if it's something that you've overcome in the past, how have you overcome it and how are you dealing with it? Making sure that you think about this stuff in advance is going to be critical for your success. In addition, you're going to want to prepare some intelligent questions about the company and the position to help you demonstrate your knowledge of the company and that you are sincerely interested in the position. There's nothing more frustrating for me when I'm interviewing someone and I ask them any questions, about me, the role, the business, and they say, no, I have nothing. If they have no interest in asking you anything, they don't care. At least that's how I feel. You want people to express an interest as a hiring manager, like in your role and in the team. Really, a lot of people forget this, that interviews are really a two-way street. A lot of people think that interviews are all about the employer asking the potential candidate questions and assessing their capabilities. But it also goes the other way. The candidate also needs to assess whether this role or this company is the right fit for them. If I think back to, earlier on in my career when I was interviewing for different roles, I remember going into an organization and I was excited about the organization and the position based on the job description and the research that I did. But when I went through the interview and I asked some of my critical questions, I started to realize that this was not going to be the fit for me. Sure, the role, the compensation, what you would kind of do would work, but when I started asking about the leadership style of the person I'd report to, the team dynamic, stuff that wasn't captured in the job description, I learned that this was not a position where I'm going to be happy long term. And when they did come to offer me that position, I decided to turn it down. That's why you always want to make sure you're preparing intelligent questions to help you understand whether this is the right fit for you. Now, when it comes to the day before the interview, a couple other things you want to make sure you're trying to do. One is contacting the company just to confirm the date and the time of your interview if it had been a while since it was last set up. Sometimes things change and schedules get rearranged. Last thing you'd want to do is show up and they're not expecting you, or there's some sort of detail that's critical to this that has shifted. If it's a remote interview, making sure that you have downloaded any of the particular software you need to use, or tested it out in advance, or got your video camera set up, or your webcam set up, or that your audio is working correctly. Also, the day before, it'd be always good to print off a couple extra copies of your resume and cover letter. The hiring manager most likely is going to have a copy of your resume, or they'll at least have a digital copy of it. But by bringing in your own copy, you show that you are prepared and you are ready to go. The last thing I always remind people on the day before an interview is get some good night's sleep. Look, it can be nerve-wracking when you're having an interview that could be crucial for your career or some advancement that you're looking for. And if you don't get a good night's sleep beforehand, you might be groggy the next day or might be struggling with coming up with answers. You want to be as sharp as possible. So the sleep that you get the night before is critical to your success. Now, when the big day arrives and it is your interview, a couple things that you need to remember. One, making sure you're eating beforehand. You're going to need as much energy as possible. Depending on the format with your interview, it could be a one-on-one interview, it could be a panel interview, there could be multiple people that they are interviewing throughout the course of the day. So you want to make sure you're seen as someone who has lots of energy and think on their feet and is sharp and is somebody who's excited to be there. And so making sure you're eating is important. A lot of people forget this. I've actually had a number of people throughout my career where I've interviewed them and they haven't ate beforehand, and then their stomach starts to grumble in the middle of the interview and they lose their train of thought. Don't let that happen to you. In addition, on the big day, you want to get dressed as early as you can to make sure that you have enough time before you dash out the door. Don't leave it to the very last minute and you're getting yourself ready, because you're bound to forget something. You want to make sure you're leaving plenty of time to get to your interview. What if there's traffic? What if there is some sort of delay or the weather's not as ideal as it needs to be? Leave enough room so you can arrive early, but not too early that you just seem that you're, crazy and desperate, for attention or anything like that as well. Because if you show up too early, then you're actually going to have them wondering, should we go and acknowledge him now? Do we make him wait? What do we do? So make sure you leave yourself enough time, but not too much time. And when you get to the place, and say there is a person at the front reception, or when you're actually, meeting with the hiring manager, make sure you introduce yourself well. Shake hands, have eye contact. Introduce yourself in a way that projects a level of confidence without being arrogance. As you slip into the interview, it's important to relax and be confident too. You've made it to this far. This is your opportunity. But remember, the interview is a conversation. Don't overthink it. If you need a second, give yourself a second. Breathe. Don't just fill dead air with things that don't need to be said. That's actually something that trips people up quite a bit, is that they will start talking when someone's trying to take notes, and they might say something extra that doesn't need to be said. You want to be clear, you want to be articulate, you want to be concise. Don't be such a rambler. Lastly, on the day of your interview, after it's all said and done, whether you think you nailed it or you failed it, write a quick thank you email and send that to the individual who interviewed you. This can be something short and sweet and to the point, but can really make a difference in separating you from others if you take 30 seconds to a minute to craft an email. I actually recommend that you should always have the email ready to go beforehand, so that as soon as you get home, you can easily quickly send that email out. Have it saved as a draft so you're ready to go. Personalize the message in any way, but make sure that you are taking the time to thank your interviewer for spending time with you. Everyone's got a busy schedule, and they took time out of theirs to meet with you. If you want to leave a lasting impression, this little bit can make a world of difference.
This podcast episode has been brought to you by my website, chrishanna.ca. I'm here to help you achieve more than you thought possible. Remember, with a combination of being authentic, bold, and confident, it can make all the difference in achieving what you want. At chrishanna.ca, check out my blogs, ebooks, and other resources to assist you with achieving your goals. I also share the speaking topics that I'm currently offering. Remember, every session is 100% customized to your environment. For more information or to book me for an upcoming event, visit chrishanna.ca today.